You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Deku Enters Hazbin Hotel. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Mrotrax on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. 15 years ago. Izukumidoriya, age 18, had been on her way home from a visit with her best friend Mitsuki Bakugou, celebrating the blonde woman's soon-to-be-born child, Inko's own godson Katsuki Bakugou. Inko was a lovely young woman from a good family. She had never done anything wrong in her life and was quite humble. Her quirk of attraction allowed her to pull small objects toward her, although it often took her a few waves of her hand. Ironically and possibly in spite of her quirk's name, Inko had never had a boyfriend. Any man who showed interest in her was often more interested in Mitsuki. The joke was on them however, as Mitsuki only had eyes for her husband Masaru, who saw Inko as a little sister. It had been a lovely evening, takeout was exchanged, Mitsuki shifted from being her usually loud and proud self to a sobbing and worrying mess who had hugged Inko desperately, and the two had begun daydreaming about how cute Katsuki was going to be. As Inko made her way home, she kept her guard up. It wasn't too late in the night, but no pro-hero was officially stationed in her neighborhood. Unfortunately, while she had kept an eye behind her and the other for cars or other people, she had not focused on her side. A cloth with a foul odor had suddenly covered her mouth as she was pulled into an alley and into a van. She soon lost consciousness. She had awoken, bound, gagged and surrounded by dozens of men and women in cloaks with hoods, some wearing goat skulls. The room was filled with pentagrams and candles, along with pictures of demonic creatures. They were chanting something, but Inko held no care for the words. Her head was still spinning and she tried to attract something to cut her binds, only for her hands to be grabbed and forced open. The apparent leader of the group then stepped forward and stabbed her chin, drawing blood which was poured onto a goat skull as another hooded person erected a barrier to protect them and another shot flame at the bloodied skull. Inko was left very close to the now burning skull, which began to float and crack as it spun wildly. She desperately tried to escape, but to no avail. A bright flash suddenly filled the room, blinding everyone. A thud was heard, along with an annoyed "Ow!" The kidnappers cheered, glad that whatever they had been doing had seemed to work. However, the figure that came from the smoke was not at all what Inko had been expecting. The being that emerged wore a very draper white suit with a black bow tie and a red undershirt. He also wore a white top hat, with a purple snake and red apple on the brim, and carried an apple-topped black cane that matched his hat. His eyes are yellow with black pupils and he had red cheeks, almost like apples. His eyelids were purple, like eyeshadow. Also, unlike in the many books and movies where similar things occur, the being made no grand declaration of freedom, or announcing his presence like All Might did. In fact, he looked dazed. Confused, even. His eyes were unblinking and his form stiff. That caught the attention of the celebrating cultists. Several whipped out pictures, which based on their confused looks, did not match what they had in front of them. "Did you make sure she's a virgin?" The apparent leader asked the nearest follower. "Yeah, boss." The follower then turned to the trio who had been chanting, lighting candles and drawing pentagrams. "Did you morons miss up? Are you shitting me? We've been practicing for months." A female voice hissed out. "My arms are practically stuck in the motions, it's a miracle I get anything done at the office." "Well then, maybe this place isn't good enough." Another hissed. "I told you to do it in that desecrated temple, but no. You all have allergies or some SHT. You know I'm scared of the dark. We're summoning a demon for Cammy's sake. That's way scarier than anything in the dark. Did we even summon the right one? I thought we agreed on Mara. A man with closed eyelids called out. Mara? I thought we were going for Akuma. It's the same thing. No, the spirituality and belief changes everything. You're overthinking this. Inko, in spite of the fear she should be feeling and her longing to escape and go home, was becoming embarrassed to witness such petty arguments. A squeak suddenly ended all conversations, and the summoned began to step forward in wobbling steps. Very, very slow wobbling steps, with the apple cane seeming to be the only thing keeping him on his feet. Suddenly, the cane got stuck, but he moved forward, just for another pair of steps before he paused, as if realizing he no longer had his cane. He grasped at air twice, a slight twitch in his eyebrows. He then fell face first towards the ground, only to land right back on his feet and smile, revealing razor-sharp and sparkling teeth. The cultists cheered. "Good evening, fellows." The being said. "What is it you wish of me?" The way he talked he was calm, affable. But Inko saw his eyes, they looked like his tone, but there was a malice and anger within them. The leader stepped forward, dragging Inko along with him. The being in front of him spied this, and for a split second Inko was sure she saw some more anger at him directed at her, or was it her state? "My lord." "Lucifer." The being answered. "Lucifer Magna." The leader continued. "We have brought you to our world so that we may serve you and bring your power to this diseased earth. We pledge ourselves to you and offer you this version, whose BLD helped give you form." He tossed Inko at his feet and he looked down at her, raising an eyebrow. "So, you have no plan?" Lucifer asked. The cultist's glee vanished. My lord." "Are you expecting to do everything?" Lucifer asked. "And to bring me here, you roughed up." He cut off Inko's GG with a single claw. "What is your name, my dear?" "Izukumidoriya Inko." The terrified woman managed to say. Lucifer's eyes narrowed and he stood back up, rubbing his forehead. "Allow me to clarify." Lucifer groaned. "You ladies and gentlemen summoned me away from my realm and darling wife, pledged your lives to me, offer me a rather innocent-looking woman who seems to be much like my daughter, and then expect me to use my power to fit you idea of what this world should be. Is that correct? Wife? Daughter?" The leader and several others asked, only to find a cane lifting their faces upwards. "Open your mouth when you speak, mumbling is pitiful." Lucifer growled, his eyes suddenly becoming shadowed as he tossed his cane away. "You didn't even know who I was and act with surprise to find I have a family. Did any of you even truly think of what to do if I, perchance, was not amused by what I saw?" He began to grow, his mouth becoming feral and darkened, sharp wings burst from his suit as black and blue flames erupted from his palms. The snake on his hat began to glare and drip flaming venom as its fangs grew. "If there is one thing I cannot tolerate," Lucifer growled, his voice becoming deeper and booming, as if thousands were speaking in his stead. "It is incompetence and doing half-peach work." It was then that the cultists knew, they'd done F up. In a second, they were all either dead or frozen in fear, until Lucifer snapped his fingers. The second they heard this, heat erupted under them and they were dragged to hell, screaming all the way. "Ah!" Lucifer smiled after he returned to normal. "Music to my ears." He then spied Inko. "Now, Inko my dear." Lucifer mused, sealing up her cut cheek with the flames he had wielded, leaving her with a scar. "What to do with you?" Inko winced under the burning and smell of singed flesh, as well as in revelation she was not out of danger yet, but before she could say anything, a finger silenced her. "Please. Allow me to think." Now that he had dealt with these morons who had pulled him from Lilith and Charlie, Lucifer had a moment to realize where and when he was. A day in hell was roughly the same as a year or two on earth, but it shifted on occasion. Here he was, the devil himself, temporarily summoned to a world filled with powerful beings. It would be a shame on his own part to not do something before he returned to hell. But what? Empower a supervillain? Curse someone? That endeavor fellow was pending. But then he recalled the young woman at his mercy and realized something. A world full of superheroes. The perfect opportunity to try for an antichrist. This was not Lucifer's first attempt at an antichrist. He had tried before. Many times. Too many times. At least, 64 or so, last he recalled. Evidently, something always went wrong, the child couldn't show subtly and was found out, or went full native or, worse yet, outright rejected their demon heritage and became a hero that opposed him. If it was going to work out this time, Lucifer would have to make sure certain things went differently. If nothing else, he could gain another child. Charlie needed at least one sibling she could be in easy contact with. However, Lucifer was no mere opportunist. He was a happily married opportunist. Every time he had tried for an antichrist, he had had his darling wife's blessing to do so, minus that one time with that Rosemary lady. Lucifer whipped out his phone and called one of the two beings he loved more than almost anything else. Lily? He cooed over the phone. Yes, darling, I'm fine. Just summoned Awa, yes, they actually did manage to get me, but evident ally I was not the one they wanted. No, I'll be right back down, but before I do so, I do believe I have found it this time. The right conditions for an antichrist. The mother? Right here. Lilith Magna, the queen of hell, looked at the terrified young woman who with a single yes or no, may hold her husband's son. Oh, she is adorable. Lilith cooed. All right, you can do a Zeus this time. But the second you get home. But of course, infernal cupcake. Lucifer smiled, ending the call and then turning his attention to Inko. Inko awoke on her couch in her home, with a tear-stained Mitsuki yelling at the cops and heroes while Masaru gave her warm towels and laid food out for her. What? Inko asked in confusion and relief. Hearing her voice, the blonde bombshell had abandoned her tirade and rushed to hug her best friend. The second they hugged, Inko burst into tears and held on to her best friend with all she had. As she later found out, Inko had been found the building unconscious and the only living person. The pros could find no clue as to what happened, except that Inko's kidnappers had been part of the creature rejection clan. After giving her own recollection of the events, which, perhaps for the better, was fuddled and hazy, the tests Inko went through once she had calmed down enough proved what many feared, she was PRGN. However, no father could be identified. The VERYYYY parents were disgusted when their daughter decided to keep the baby. So disgusted in fact, that to Inko's shock and tears, they decided to have nothing more to do with her, promising to write her out of their death will. Luckily for Inko, her parents suddenly died in a car accident before they could do this, and every month or so, she would receive gold and jewels to cover expenses. Her only clue as to where they came from was a simple question in an envelope from Italy. Do you really think the rich are honest with how much they have? Mitsuki was also there to help Inko out, getting her a job in modeling and then as a makeup assistant. The soon-to-be mother didn't touch the gold and jewels, and by the time of her third trimester, Inko had enough saved up to live comfortably for life, especially when she refused to leave her apartment. When the day finally came, she cried more than she ever had in her life as she held her own wailing baby in her arms, a tiny little boy with freckles and wisps of green hair. I love you, Izuku. Inko cooed, kissing his forehead and cheeks. The baby calmed down and reached for his mother, who hugged him gently. While Izuku may not have come to her in the best of ways, Inko did not nor would she ever regret becoming a mother. And even though she had no idea how, why, or what kind it would be like, she knew her little Izuku would do great things. From hell, Lucifer and Lilith watched the scene through special opera glasses, glasses that showed something very different. When they saw Izuku, his skin was chalk white and two tiny horns poked out of his hair. And his freckles were larger, like tiny red circles. "Oh, he has your cheeks, darling," Lilith cooed. "As freckles." Lucifer sighed. "What's wrong with that?" Lilith asked. "They're adorable. And he is a baby, after all. Perhaps they'll fade. Too much red in the face." Lucifer mmm. "The color contrast will make him seem less threatened." "Oh, never mind. Mom. Dad." The rulers of hell turned to a girl with blonde hair and cheeks like Lucifer in a red dress poking her head from behind the door. This was their daughter, the princess of hell herself. "Charlie." Lucifer beamed. "Come here for a moment." Charlie, as she preferred to be called, obeyed her father and took his opera glasses before looking down and letting out a very undemonic coo and squeal. "Aw. He's so cute." She beamed before realizing something. "Wait, is he on Earth? Why is there a demon on Earth?" "That right there, is your new baby half-brother, Izukumidoriya." At 14 years old, with broccoli-like hair and freckles, Izukumidoriya was not considered normal in the eyes of many who knew him, and not just because he was quirkless, although that point was probably the cause of more of his problems than any other. Actually, if that alone had been the one thing off about him, his life, while still not that great, would be more tolerable. No, the reasons Izuku was considered, not right, were more societal-based. It was unfortunately well known his single mother was never married and that Izuku being conceived did not happen out of mutual affection. Many said he was likely the son of a villain, and they weren't wrong. Then there was fact that his grandparents died suddenly after his mother announced her intent to keep him, which made some of the old-timers and traditionalists even more wary of him. His only friend was his godbrother Katsuki Bakugou, a certifiable genius with great tenacity and a natural at fighting even with his literal explosive quirk. And even that last part no longer applied. The second Izuku was deemed quirkless. Katsuki outright abandoned Andy began to bully him, unless his mother was nearby. In fact, Katsuki seemed to think it was his job to make Izuku remember he was worthless. In stark contrast, Mitsuki Bakugou and her husband Masaru were the only adults in Izuku's life that he trusted. Mitsuki often praised her godson's intelligence and kind-heartedness, sometimes even begging Inko to swch sons, while Masaru often helped Izuku with homework and applauded his thinking of the bigger picture. And the two were aware of their son's attitude problems, but not how he treated Izuku. And in spite of everything, Izuku did not have it in him to tattle on his only friend. Why, one would ask. A part of Izuku held on to the promise he and Katsuki had made each other when they were 3 years old, that they would become great heroes together, protecting the innocent with smiles and striking down evildoers with their overwhelming power. And if Izuku told everyone what Katsuki did, the explosive blonde would be blacklisted from all hero academia and have another reason to go after him. So that was his life: breakfast, go to school, endure bullying, go home occasionally fanboying over whatever hero he saw, have dinner with his mom, watch All Might videos and go to bed after homework. In spite of all this, Izuku continued to live his life the best he could and didn't seem too bothered by his bullies and critics. Especially not today. This was because, unknown to all but his mother, there was a place that Izuku could be whatever he wanted to be. And at this place, on this special day, something monumental was about to happen for someone who he truly and deeply loved. The only problem? Getting there and back in time for dinner. Splat. Luckily for him, a short cut just revealed itself, not the bloodied body in front of him. No, if this was anything like the past, he just had to look upwards and... Yep, there they were. Oh. Moxie-san. Millie-san. He beamed, waving to the figures who were heading back into a red portal. The two figures paused at their names being called, looking down to see who it was. They were most definitely not human: horns, red skin and hoofed feet, even if one wore boots with no visible noses. One of them had white hair and wore a suit, the other, a female, had black hair with white streaks and wore a very punk-like outfit. Oh, you're... Moxie started, only for Millie to clamp her hand over his mouth and shoot him a worried look. Heya, Izu. Millie beamed. Before you ask, he was a sec offender. And with that, any care Izuku might have held against them killing someone, died. Alright. Can I tag along? Izuku asked, reaching into his wallet and handing out all the yen he had. For you, Izuku. Moxie, pulling his wife's hand off his mouth. It's free. The two imps, stifling chuckles as they did so, wrapped their tails together to help Izuku upwards. Once he had a firm grasp, then pulled upwards and tumbled back into the portal. The other side of the portal revealed a land with a red sky, tall, sturdy and colorful buildings, all with a sleut gothic or horror feeling to them. They people who lived here were a myriad of colors, shapes and sizes, some with multiple limbs and many resembling fusions of human and animal. The atmosphere reeked of violence, intolerance and bloodlust, with screams and fights being clear for all to hear. Welcome to hell. Population, AF ton. Yes, you read right, Izuku's happy place was the place 95% or people spend their lives avoiding. The two imps helped the boy upwards, then got on one knee and bowed, as did their boss and his adopted daughter. Welcome back, Prince Izuku. Moxie and Millie's boss, Botizo the O was silent beamed. Can we get you anything? No, Blitzo-san. Izuku smiled, feeling something funny in his moith. Actually, can I borrow a mirror? The secretary of Imp, Luna, tossed Izuku one. And he smiled at what he saw. While still the same height, weight and hair, Izuku's skin was now chalk white and his freckles were now larger, red dots, resembling apples. And atop his head were two small ram-like horns. His teeth were now much sharper and pearly white. And his eyes, once fully green, now were golden yellow with green highlights. Never going to get used to this. He mused, tossing the mirror back. But I do like it. Arigato, Luna-san. The teenage hellhound simply nodded as Izuku smiled. You'll get your travel fee in a few days. Be safe until then. Izuku assured the IMP staff, although he was unsure if he or the one he was coming to see would pay. And then, with a snap of his fingers, another thing he couldn't do on Earth, he disappeared in a spiral of green flames. Wait, if he's here. Luna mused. Oh F. Guys, it's about to start. The other IMP staff raced to the TV, flipping to the most whack-fed channel in hell. History was about to be made. History that could either break their company or get them way more business. Blitzo hurriedly prepared some popcorn and pops as they settled in. Pentagram City. 666 Studios break room. The spiral of flames appeared with no announcement, but the four in the room were not alarmed. In fact, one in particular was beaming at the sight of them. A appealing blonde in a red suit, much like Entertainer from the vaudeville days. She had apple-like cheeks similar to his own, and in his mind, a smile that could melt even the hardest heart and filled him with hope. She was the princess of hell. And the reason they knew each other? Charlie Nei-chan. Izuku beamed once the flames vanished and he spied the person he had come to see. Izuku Otioto. Charlie beamed back, hugging her little half-brother, who returned the embrace. Wait, did I say it right this time? Please tell me I didn't call you Dad again. Hi, Nei-chan. Izuku assured her. I missed you. I missed you more. Charlie smiled, breaking the hug to kiss his forehead. And someone else did too. The other woman in the room had gray skin, white hair that was topped with a pink bow and what looked like an X eye patch over one of her eyes. She smiled at the sight. Ordinarily she'd be jealous of anyone being this close to Charlie, let alone a man. Hermana Mayor Vaggie. Izuku beamed in self-taught Spanish. And with those words, any resentful feelings died. Hola chico. ¿Cómo estás? Vaggie smiled sweetly at the one male she could honestly say she had an inkling of trust in. Mostly because, thanks to the difference in time between hell and earth, she had seen him as both the teenager in front of her and as an adorable enanito. Comme sa. Izuku sighed, not wanting to burden these two with his problems. Today was a special day for one of them in particular. I'm not too late, am I? Nope, right on time. Charlie assured him, patting her baby brother's head. We saved you some donuts, help yourself. They're all your favorites. Izuku beamed and made his way over to a snack table, where he saw pink glazed donuts. One of his sister's bodyguards handed him one while the other continued chomping on another. Hey Razzle. Hi Dazzle. Izuku smiled and waved, his mouth now full of donut. The two imps waved happily back at him before continuing their snacks. Izuku took a few more donuts before returning his attention to his sister and Vaggie. Okay, you remember what to say? Vaggie asked as she fixed up her girlfriend's bow tie. The Princess of Hell took a deep breath and then smiled. Yes. Let's do this. Izuku smiled. He wished he could have his sister's confidence. Just. Vaggie begged. Just look at me, and I'll mouth it to you. The minute Charlie. Deflated, Izuku began to worry. Come on, Vaggie. The Princess of Hell groaned. I know what to say. I just feel like we need to, I don't know. She grabbed and throws a donut away, which Izuku was quick to catch and stuff into his mouth as his sister continued. Make things sound more exciting. As if a light bulb went off in her head, she stiffened and then beamed. What if I sang a song about it? Vaggie asked, having heard this before. You knew I was gonna say that. Charlie cooed as she booped Vaggie on the nose, getting a light chuckle from her girlfriend. Because I know you. Vaggie smiled sweetly as she fixed up Charlie's bow again. But please don't sing. This is serious. Well, you know, I'm better at expressing myself and my goals through song. Charlie smiled as she stood on the table as Razzle and Dazzle happily continued munching on donuts, watching her with the eyes of veteran bodyguards, feigning no care when they were poised to attack the instant somebody threatened their princess. But life isn't a musical, Vaggie reminded her beloved, a point that Izuku was reluctant to but did nod in agreement in. I like your singing, Charlie Nay. He weakly said, getting a slight smile out of her. Ah, thank you, Izu. The Princess of Hell cooed as she lightly pinched her brother's cheeks. But maybe you should play it safe this time. The green-haired demi-devil noted. Fine. Charlie sighed, relenting her beloved and brother probably had a point before remembering something and bouncing in her steps as she pulled out a piece of paper. But I have these other ideas of what to say. The highlighted bits are the best parts. Vaggie took the paper and gave it a look over. It's all highlighted. She noted, then taking a closer look. Is this a drawing? Izuku looked down at the sheet of paper, seeing devils now with halos standing on a cloud with a rainbow over them. Yes. Charlie beamed. That's the happy ending, see? Everyone smiling and happy in heaven. Izuku looked at the picture. Well, it's not the most detailed, but it's cute. The Princess of Hell pouted and turned away. Izu, not everybody was gifted with sketching skills. Charlie reminded her brother with an annoyed look that then returned to an excited one. Oh. Speaking of, any new entries? With an excited look, Izuku produced his notebook and handed it to Charlie, who gleefully skimmed through it as Vaggie, exasperated and honestly just wanting to get this affair over and done, pinched the bridge of her nose. I don't think it's that simple, just please. Follow the talking points we went over. She begged, then grabbing Charlie by the shoulder to emphasize. And do not sing. Okay, fine. Charlie groaned before adopting a British accent as she saluted Vaggie and made her way over to Katie Killjoy. I'll just have to resort to my impeccable improv skills. Izuku smiled happily, shooting his sister a thumbs up. Alright, now that she's got that. Vaggie smiled, then her face turned serious. What's wrong, Izu? Nothing. The green-haired boy assured her. Nothing. Vaggie, not believing a word, asked. You're here on time, meaning you didn't scold IMP for whoever they killed. He was a CC offender villain. Izuku groaned in exasperation, stuffing a donut in his mouth. And in the time you've been here, you've scarfed down more donuts than Raz and Daz. Izuku would have denied it, but his mouth was full and Razzle and Dazzle looked famished. He looked down at the box and saw there were only 2 donuts left. Gomen. Izuku apologized. The imp simply took the box and gave him a playfully dirty look. Vaggie's smile returned, now sad. Charlie would be so much better at this, but her interview was starting. The moth demon then saw that the interview was probably not going to go well. Katie Killjoy was off on one of her tirades and had said something to make Charlie's confidence begin to falter. She shot her beloved a loving smile, and Charlie shot one back before spying Izuku looking at his feet with a saddened look. Vaggie mouthed, I got this, and motioned Charlie to go on. The blonde demoness did so, recklessly shoving her brother to the back of her mind to focus on this important matter. Come on, Chico. Vaggie cooed as she sat Izuku down on the floor. You can tell me. We had to do our career aptitude tests. Izuku explained. Well, we were supposed to. But everyone wants to be heroes. Kachan started his usual spiel and then Sensei pointed out how I wanted to be at the same school he was applying for and then everyone started to laugh. I pointed out I could go there. They got rid of no quirkless rule, but Los Niños son una mierda. Vaggie sighed in anger under her breath. Izuku didn't need to finish his story. Charlie had mentioned this to Kachan before, the one being, aside from the eldritch daughter, that the princess of hell outright loathed. And Vaggie was in that boat as well. Not knowing what to do here, Vaggie gave Izuku a hug and patted his head. Well, whatever they say. They're idiots not see you for who you are, a kid, smart kid who just wants to help. If they can't see that. FM. Also, don't tell Charlie I cursed. I hang out with Kachan. Izuku reminded her. The interview then began, with Charlie explaining her new passion project, in the wake of the yearly purges from heaven's exorcists in order to deal with the overpopulation of hell. Charlie was starting up a place where one could go to in order to work towards being redeemed for their sins. She hoped that in doing so, more people would go to heaven and fewer, if no one at all, would have to die. She called it, the Happy Hotel. Wait, is it really a hotel? Izuku asked Vaggie. I thought it was more like a rehab center. Technically, it is. Vaggie sighed. But this is hell, do you really think people are going to go to that? We did some test audiences, 9 out of 10 stopped listening after rehab, so went with plan B, a hotel. Everybody at least listened after that. So, is there like a reward system in therapy? Izuku asked. Charlie didn't go into too much detail. Is more of the hotel available after you reach a certain level? Ordinarily, Vaggie would be annoyed by someone asking these questions. But not with Izuku. Hell, if anything, Izuku was acting like a real journalist by actually asking questions, further proof that the Spider-Woman who had been badmouthing her princess had not earned her place in the natural way. From the way she carried herself, Vaggie suspected that in life and maybe even in hell, Katie had, well, sucked up in certain ways. Immediately, people began to laugh and chuckle, and before anyone could do anything, Charlie began to sing. Oh no. Vaggie groaned. Izuku smiled and danced along from his spot with Vaggie. He never got tired of listening to Charlie sing, no matter the song or tune, anything his big sister sang was phenomenal. And it always brought back memories. Memories which unfortunately were cut off when everyone apart from himself, Vaggie and the sinners started laughing at Charlie's ideas as finally and sadly, the song came to an end. Charlie wasn't deterred however, revealing that the Happy Hotel already had someone in it, Angeldust, a PWN star under the employ of Valentino the PMP and PWN Lord of Hell. In life, if Izuku recalled right, Angeldust had also been a member of the American branch of the Meta Liberation Army as well as a vocal supporter of Harvey Milk. A proudly LGBT gangster with a quirk that allowed him to hide/grow limbs, he was also known for being talented at guerrilla warfare. He apparently had died overdosing on cane while in the midst of an org. Charlie proudly remarked that for 2 weeks, Angel had not started any fights, drunk any alcohol, had any kind of drag and had not been engaging in SXL endeavors not related to his work. Izuku beamed, happily the universe was being kind to his sister. Sadly, this had been ruined when it was revealed was in the midst of helping another turf seeker, Cherrybomb, in a battle with the local kingpin Lord Serpenter. And at that point, everything went to hell. Charlie had somehow Izuku didn't recall how began to fight with Katie, who had transformed into a spider demon. Vaggie, Razzle and Dazzle started fighting with the filming crew after pushing him to the side. "Stop!" Izuku called out. Charlie kicked Katie away as her co-host, Tom Trench, appeared in flames, screaming for help. "Stop, please!" Izuku begged again. Demons alike were now screaming as they moved to finish whatever battles they started. Vaggie had already killed 2 cameramen and the 2 imps were reading to attack. After what had happened in school and seeing his sister's dream demolished, Izuku had enough. "I said stop." A pressure was felt throughout hell, making many pause in their steps. Only the overlords and royal couple were not completely scared by this pressure. In fact, Lucifer himself broke out into a small grin at this feeling. "Looks like my boy is showing off." He chuckled, both pitying and meaning to thank the sinner who brought this on. Was wondering what it would take. Lilith mused, a look of intrigue on her face. Back at the studio, all eyes fell onto Izuku, whose schoolboy uniform was now replaced by a green suit that was matched by the green flames that danced around his form before leaping off him and wrapping around Katie, who was now battered and bloodied by Charlie, who aside from a rip in her suit and messy hair, was unscathed. "Who the F are?" the spider began. "I'm her baby brother," Izuku hissed. Here was the truth, Izukumidoriya did actually have a quirk, and a very powerful one at that. In fact, Izuku's quirk was potentially the most powerful ability of all time, easily surpassing any copying, stealing or stockholding power, able to dwarf any creation power and render any and all transformations meaningless. Antichrist. Its full abilities were not known, partially due to Izuku not being able to train it. What was known is that it gave Izuku a demonic appearance, curse-like magical powers and reality warping. The only problem, and reason for so much of the unease and pain in the young man's life was that said quirk only worked in one place in all of the multiverse. Hell only weakness, aside from the one previous stated, was that if any holy or religious-based object came close to Izuku, he'd feel ill. If any entered his body, it would feel like a swarm of angry hornets were racing through his body, stinging and ripping at his flesh. Luckily for him, religion was fairly low on many people's lists in his time. Once 80% of humanity gained superhuman abilities, beliefs had been silenced or, if they hoped to survive in this new world, heavily edited. So, while on Earth he was nobody, in hell, Izuku was almost everything he wanted to be, respected, adored, feared. Yes, Izuku did not lose sleep knowing that in the one place his power worked, many cowered at the thought of him. They were all among the worst people to ever live, so if he could do that, he was doing something right. And now, he was feeling vengeful. Izuku could take insults to himself. He could handle his dream being insulted. He could even gladly admit his weaknesses. But if anyone ever insulted his sister, who does this be think she is? A voice in his voice suddenly asked him. She's not even an overlord. The boy smiled. Let's just say it was a good thing no hero actively monitored the Pentagram City part of hell, because what he was about to do would have gotten him blacklisted from any hero school. With a single raise of his hand, Izuku levitated Katie upwards. He then clenched his fist and a sickening yet satisfying crunch filled the room and Katie was pushed inwards. Izuku's eyes then burst into green flames and his teeth grew sharper. Transmutation. Izuku growled. The sun turned water into wine, I'll settle for changing BLD to wine. Katie's form crunched and buckled to Izuku's will and soon, in place of the spider demon, there was a bottle of wine with her eyes. Huh. Izuku mused. You know what? I understand why Katsuki does this. It's exhilarating. Mr. Trench, would you care to take a drink? Don't mind if I do, Your Majesty. Tom beamed as he downed as much of the wine as he could, ignoring Katie's protests. Charlie stuck out her tongue at Katie, who was then turned back to normal, but now weak and gasping for air. The Princess of Hell then turned to the camera and said, "This is optional. The doors will be open in 2 hours. If you want, you're welcome to try." Vaggie then moved in and hollered. "Angeldust. I think you did this good this time, darling." Lilith mused. He may just be the one to succeed. But of course. Lucifer smiled. Still. Doesn't mean either ourselves or them will make it easy for him. Now, forget the children for a moment, where were we? The King and Queen of Hell then returned to their alone time. The limo ride to the Happy Hotel was unbearably awkward and uncomfortable. Luckily, no one gave them trouble. Whether or not this was because of many still recovering from the purge or if the display of power played a part was undetermined. Angeldust had been jovial when he saw Izuku, he'd always been good with kids, and one that knew most of his pre-hell life was automatically on his protect list. "Hey there, kiddo. Kicking or kissing any fine asses?" he asked. From him, this was probably the nicest thing that could be said. Izuku, dry and now feeling shame in what he had done, had simply waved. Charlie was off to the side, her head hung in shame and embarrassment. Vaggie was in the middle, her rage barely contained. Izuku was on the other side, shooting his sister concerned looks. "What?" the spider demon asked. "What?" Vaggie asked before tearing out her hair. What were you doing?" Angeldust sighed and rolled his eyes. "I owed my girl buddy a solid. Isn't that a redeeming quality? Helping friends with stuff. Not with turf wars that result in territorial genocide." Vaggie snapped back. Izuku, not liking where this was going, huddled closer to Charlie. His half-sister brought him closer to her, although neither was sure who was comforting who. You win some, you lose a few hundred." Angel laughed as he continued to play with the car window button. It wasn't that bad, anyway. Vaggie, having had enough of the window going up and down, along with the PWN star's SHT, manifested a knife and hit the SWCH, narrowing her eye in irritation. She had missed, this time. "Ah, come on. I had to." Angel whined, brushing his hair back. "My credibility was on the line. I mean, what kind of reputation would I have if people found out I was trying to go clean?" He adopted a devilish and stuck smirk, taking his chest. "What was it, anyways?" Izuku often asked. "It just throws out my entire persona." "Your credibility?" Vaggie asked indignantly. "What about the hotels? Your little stunt. It made us look like AF. Joke." Angeldust simply scoffed. No, babe. Jokes are funny. I made you look, sad. And pathetic. Like an orphan with no arms or legs, oh. With progeria. As Charlie hid behind her hair, Izuku almost vomited, quickly reaching into his backpack and pulling out a paper bag labeled, "for stomach." He then lost his lunch in said bag, which, once he was done, Vaggie threw out the window, where it hit a demon. Great! Angel groaned as he started looking around. Now I'm bummed thinking about it. Hey, this thing have any liquor? Can you please just try to take this seriously? Vaggie asked, some desperation clear in her tone. Inwardly, Izuku mused how unlikely that was. While he was nowhere as bad, Angeldust's stubbornness and pride reminded Izuku of Katsuki. Fine, I'll try. Angeldust answered as he flicked a dust nunny away, then smirked. Just don't get your taco in a twist, baby. Was that you being racist or sexist? Vaggie snapped. Whatever pisses you off more. Is there seriously no liquor in here? Angel groaned. Vaggie, seeing as this wasn't getting anywhere, returned to sit next to Charlie, her arms crossed under her shirt. I'm gonna kill him, she announced, with the finality of someone going to out buy milk. Too late, Toots. Angel retorted, before realizing something and laughing. Hey, wait a tick. Would that make me double dead? Ha, and where exactly do I go? To double hell? Sorry, you're stuck with me, B, get used to it. Growling. Come mierda malparido. Vaggie angrily cured as she grit her teeth and a skull appeared in place of her pupil. Charlie gasped and covered Izuku's ears, then putting herself in the middle of her girlfriend and little brother. Vaggie! She shouted in shock. Why you said? Vaggie's rage dissipated as she realized what she had done. Nei-san? Izuku cut in. You do remember I go to school with Kachan, right? That boy said all but one curse word. Besides, if I say it's Spanish I can't get in trouble right away. In spite of adoring her baby brother for his being such a cinnamon roll that must be protected at all cost, a small part of her couldn't help but smile at Izuku's loophole abuse. She was a demon, after all. Vaggie evidently shared in these thoughts, shooting the boy a grateful look and mouthing gracias. I dunno who this Katsuki is, Angel started. But he sounds like somebody I'd hate, then like a lot then hate again. The closest I have to a friend on earth. Izuku explained. Not comfortable about prying, mostly due to the tone in the boy's voice bringing back some memories of before he was the CC and badass gangster he was now. Angeldust opted to do what he did best, pointing what he felt was the real upside of the situation as he looked out the limo's window. Listen Princey, Princessa and Sombrelita, who cares if some jagoffs got hurt? Most of them are ugly freaks. Just look around, you got a bunch AF in harlequin-looking babies down here. You're one to talk. Vaggie growled under her breath. Angeldust simply smirked and motioned to his form. Hey! This body is flawless. Everyone wants some of me, and I've got the creepy fan letters to prove it. He reached into his, whatever it was, revealing a rather disturbing fan letter, one with a dirty naked middle-aged man, who ironically had a "No Angel Dust" tattoo, licking an angel dust body pillow attached with the message saying, "Show me you feet." It was signed, Byron, #1 fan critic. Vaggie growled in annoyance. That was really uncool, you know, Angel. Charlie said, the first word she'd said to him all day. Uncool. Vaggie snapped, not at Charlie, but in general annoyance. Uncool. Charlie, after that train wreck, there is no way anyone is gonna wanna stay at the hotel. She turned her attention to the cause of most of her annoyance. All thanks to you and your selfish bullshit. Does that mean I don't have a free room anymore? Angel asked. All he got was an exasperated Vaggie with widened, twitching eyes and her arms outstretched. Ah, well shucks. The four finally arrived at the happy hotel, exhausted and drained. Izuku, see could we meet up on Saturday instead? Charlie asked. I need some time to myself. Hi, Nei-san, Izuku sighed in sadness. He understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. As Charlie left to make a call, Izuku prepared to summon a portal. Espera chico. Vaggie called out, rushing deeper into the lobby and then returning with a round plate wrapped in tinfoil. "I figured you may want to take it easy after all, that. And since no one else is here." She unwrapped the tinfoil, revealing what was probably Izuku's second favorite meal of all time, Vaggie's own, homemade paella, a family recipe 6 generations old. "Gracias, Vaggie." Izuku smiled, giving her a hug. The moth demoness cringed slightly at the hug, but then adopted a kind smile and patted him on the head. "De nada." Vaggie smiled. "Now, you better get on home before your mom worries." "I'll tell Charlie." With a grateful smile, Izuku snapped his fingers, summoning a portal. "Izuku." Vaggie stopped him. "You know Charlie loves you, right?" Izuku smiled. "I know," he said. "Next time it'll be better." The moth demoness smiled sweetly. Exhaustion was catching up with her again, but she wanted to make sure Izuku stepped through the portal before relaxing. "Buenas noches, Chico." Vaggie smiled. "Buenas noches, mi hermana." Izuku then stepped through the portal, just missing the visit that would change his sister's life forever by a mere second. The second he stepped out of the portal, Izuku found he had returned to normal. His skin was back to normal and the apples that had decorated his cheeks were now freckles. The biggest downside of all this was losing his horns. Izuku had always liked them. With a sigh, Izuku made his way back home. "Mom, I'm back," he announced. Izukumidoriya was a tired woman. Not exhausted, but drained. She was still quite fetching at 32 years old, having never had money problems due to not only her inheritance but also the gold and jewels she received monthly. Her figure was healthy and attractive. This helped her and her best friend Mitsuki in their careers as models, something Inko hid as much as she could. The one noticeable turnoff to men, aside from her son, was the scar on her cheek from when she had been kidnapped all those years ago. It wasn't too bad, giving her a tough girl-like look in spite of her gentle nature. But while Inko may not have had a romantic relationship in her life, she honestly felt that she didn't need one. Above all, she loved Izuku and supported his relationship with his half-sister, the one being in the universe she trusted to keep him safe, aside from Mitsuki. "How was your day?" Inko asked as she finished a cup of tea, then sniffed the air. "And what smells so nice?" Izuku smiled at his mother and peeled back the tinfoil. "Vaggie made paella for us," Izuku answered. "My day was okay." Inko caught the hold in her son's words. "Is Charlie?" she started. The announcement didn't go so great. Izuku sighed, looking down at his feet. I kind of, maybe, cursed the news lady." Inko's brow turned stern. "Izuku daiki briner hirakoshi midoriya," she started. "She insulted Charlie and okayed the Jeffrey Dahmer cooking show in hell." Izuku quickly added, fearing his mother's disappointment. Inko's anger vanished when she processed what her son had said. She was already leaning towards ignoring Izuku's act if it was to defend his sister's honor, but now it was assured when he told her how the person he attacked greenlit the show for a cannibalistic serial killer. So, she smiled and kissed her son's forehead. "You're not mad?" Izuku asked. "Well," Inko confessed, half faking being deep in thought and otherwise being honester, "I am a little disappointed you didn't try and settle the matter as well as you could have." Izuku hung his head in shame before Inko rose it back up. "But at least your power for a good cause. So, no internet tonight." Izuku smiled, being able to live with that. With that, they sat down to eat. The paella dinner was delicacy and the highlight of Izuku's day. It was sadly also the last meal before the last day of Izuku's life. Too rich and powerful, Katie Killjoy officially feared for her afterlife. The king of hell himself was in her room. And while he spoke calmly and smiled kindly, she was a fool if she thought she would emerge from this unscathed. Awfully big ego for a mere reporter. Lucifer mused, slowly standing up. I do believe you need to be reminded of the order here, miss. What was your name again? He gave her no room to answer, lifting her upwards with only this thumb. It's quite lucky for you that my wife is too busy. Lucifer smiled. She'd be far more brutal than I. In spite of everything, Katie did what many would do in this situation, she begged. Emma my king, please. Have mercy on me, your son. My dear son didn't do sht. Lucifer hissed, his horrifying true demon form slowly manifesting, himself growing larger and his skin becoming blood red. Must be the human in him, going to have to speak to him about that. The first rule of being royalty in hell, when it comes to punishing arrogant sinners. You never do a half-peach job. Katie screamed, and no one cared. For the next few months, Tom Trench would be the sole newscaster for 666 News. Again, no one would care. In fact, viewership would go up. The next day was the straw that broke the camel's back. Katsuki did something that officially put him on Hell's pending list. Hey Deku. He smirked as he ready to leave with some cronies. There is a way to get a quirk. Take a swan dive and hope you get one in your next life. While horrible for having his former friends say that, today was a bad day for Izuku in general. It was the anniversary of his mother's kidnapping and his birthday, both of which were filled with bad memories. Inko had a therapy session and no one had forgotten what Sensei had revealed the day before, so the whole day, people were laughing at him. The teachers all called him delusional and told him to grow up. Grow up. The same words Charlie's critics said. And then Todd had led Izuku to thinking that if he hadn't been there, Charlie could have focused and actually done well in the interview, just like his mother could be leading a normal life without him. And then, after destroying a hero analysis notebook, Katsuki Bakugou had suicide baited him. In his mind, Izuku honestly thought this would be good for everyone. He took out a piece of paper and pinned it to the roof. I'm sorry Mom. But I only caused trouble here and I can't take it anymore. Please, be happy. I'll check in every day. Thank you for everything you've done. I love you more than anything. And with that said, he jumped off the roof, committing a mortal sin and being sent right to hell, where he could use his quirk to help make Charlie's dream come true at least. At least, that's what would have happened. Before you consider taking that fool's advice, might we have a moment of your time, Prince of Darkness? Izuku saw he was not alone anymore, there now stood 3 hooded figures. We represent someone who wishes to make your dream of becoming a hero reality. The first started. They wish to speak with you. Your sister will be in the immediate area. The tallest assured him. Regardless of what you decide, we will return you to your home at the end. With nothing left to lose and perhaps something to gain, Izuku shot Inko a text telling her he'd be a little late and jumped into the portal. It would be nice to have one more dinner with her. The minute he saw the red suit, the young demi-demon knew who this was. And he was surprised his pants were still in a decent state. Good day, my dear lad. His host smiled, revealing a big, toothy grin and fixed his monocle. I do so hope my associates weren't too rough. Allah. Izuku managed to speak with a shaking pointed finger before the demon took said hand in a handshake. That's right, Alastor. A pleasure to meet you, my boy. Quite a pleasure. Can I offer you anything? Tea? Bourbon? The BLD of Katie Killjoy? Izuku was too scared to make a sound. Alastor, the radio demon. A demon just as, if not even more powerful than the overlords of hell. But unlike the overlords, he had no interest in territory or power. He went as he pleased and few could stop him. Aside from Vox, he was probably Lucifer's favorite non-family citizen of hell, and even Lucifer didn't like seeing Alastor more than needed. According to Vaggie, when he'd first came to hell in the 1930s, Alastor had slaughtered 3 of the primordial overlords without much trouble in a single night before moving to other turf seekers, broadcasting his massacres through all radios in hell. No one could hear anything else for months, they only stopped when Alastor decided to start up his own radio show. Izuku had heard through Charlie that Alastor had used Beelzebub's intestines to strangle the Overlord and then kept them as a jump rope, made Mephistopheles burn himself to death after stabbing his eyes out with his horns and cowed the 7 deadly sins into entertaining him. That was all that was known of that last bit. The sins refused to speak of what had happened, or outright screamed and ran for cover whenever asked. And the owl demons were just as quiet as to whatever Alastor had done to not only get Stolas to pay attention to earthly matters and gain worshippers/associates, but also, made him go from heterosexual to whatever he currently was. Please excuse the sudden summon, but I saw you on the picture show yesterday with your sister and just knew I had to meet you. And may I just say, my boy. Bravo. Never did like newscasters, arrogant buggers. Izuku didn't move, terror-stricken in his form. My dear boy, you can relax. Alastor smiled, his face then shifting into a radio. If I wanted to hurt you, we wouldn't even be speaking. Izuku's pants were finally in need of changing. This was not helped when Alastor's face returned to normal along with his jovial tone. Now, let me ask you something, and please, answer as truthfully as you can. What do you know of voodoo, my dear boy? Izuku began rambling. You gain your powers from Loa, you're a boker and had to be taught by someone else from a very early age given how strong you are. On that note, your mother probably was voodoo queen. Petro voodoo is left-handed and evil, enables you to look into someone's past to see desires and dreams. Hoodoo is the folk magic most people associate with voodoo and where I assume most of your powers come from engas or talismans that house spirits. Your microphone is probably one. Alastor smiled, glad he was doing this with someone who had a brain and at least some knowledge of his powers. It made this far more entertaining. Chumps and desperate fools got boring so fast. Excellent, Izuku my lad. Alastor beamed. Could have done without the rambling, but you're new to this and it adds to your charm. Now, you want to be a superhero, if I understand. Izuku nodded and Alastor waited. But my quirk only works here. There it was. The hook. Well, what would you say if I told you I could make it so that your quirk worked on Earth as well? Alastor asked. Izuku's head snapped upwards. Unknown to him, Charlie was in the other room, struggling to get through the doorway, which was blocked by a muting glass of sorts. I've tried for years. Izuku started. How would you even? A mental block or two, nothing I can't handle. Alastor assured him. Why? Izuku asked. Why would you help me? Like I told your sister. Alastor beamed. Boredom. And while the hotel's inevitable failure will definitely keep me entertained, my work needs a new muse. A new focus, and you, my dear Izuku, are that focus. Izuku was starting to get a clearer picture. So, you'll. If you accept, yes. I'll broadcast your adventures all over hell. Everyone here knows a bunch of your other half-brothers, sisters, cousins and whatever's tried the antichrist route, but this time they'll experience it with you. Just imagine, your triumphs, failures, passion. All of the ingredients for some wonderful entertainment. Alastor then moved in for the kill. And it may even help your sister's hotel get some patrons. Izuku was still hesitant, which Charlie, still desperately trying to get at him, was grateful for. Alastor was a deal-maker, he never did anything without hiding what he truly wanted. Of course, you don't trust me, and I can't say I'd blame you. The radio demon pointed out. You can just go back to your boring, dreadful life. Try and become a hero without your quirk. That'll be a story for the ages once it comes here. Remind your darling saint of a mother how you struggle when all you want to do is help, but are held back by a handicap. Grin and bear those fools who will never see you for who you truly are. Settle for a minimum wage job. Izuku was seeing more and more of Alastor's points. Or, be a real hero and take a gamble for the future. Alastor smiled. Let me help you become a name that is respected and feared. You could be the one to truly save or DMN the universe. And all I ask, is that I share your story with the sinners here in hell. Izuku looked down in his feet. Maybe it was because of the last 2 rough days. Maybe the SHT in his pants made him so uncomfortable he ignored his instincts. If you do this, Izuku said, I want you to promise Charliemorningstar and the hotel will not come to harm. And I only want my quirk to work when I'm actually doing hero work. Alastor smiled. So, it's a deal, then. A green, pulsating magic erupted Alastor's outstretched hand, voodoo and hoodoo symbols floating around it. Izuku looked at the hand. Then at Alastor. He thought about his sister, his mother, his dream. His dream. All he wanted was to help people. If he had to make a deal to ensure that he had a real, honest chance. So be it. Deal. Izuku said, taking and shaking the hand. Yees. Alastor grinned evilly. Instantly, the magic left Alastor's hand and forced itself into Izuku's body. Instantly, the boy began to feel a sick, demented and yet intoxicating feeling engulf his form. Izuku, no. Charlie screamed as she finally broke through, but was held back by Alastor's cane. 4 years later. In a world full of quirks, heroes and villains, young Izukumidoriya had learned very early on that not all men are created equal. This was extremely true for him, having been conceived by the union of the King of Hell himself and his human mother. Although unaware of the full details, Izuku was a very bright child and had picked up on the fact that there was probably a good reason his daddy was not around. The fact that his mommy never talked about him was the first clue. The second was that whenever it came up, people often were questioning or outright didn't comment. And finally, there was the fact that even Inko herself did not seem to fully recall anything about him. The only thing Izuku did know about his father was that he had saved his mother after she had been kidnapped. This had made Izuku think that perhaps his father was a hero, and thus, his already dead-set dream of becoming like All Might was solidified. Which brings us to today. Being at the age when a quirk is supposed to awaken and yet with no sign of his own manifesting, the boy and his mother had gone to the doctor, but this visit ended in sadness and heartbreak. According to the doctor, who was very blunt and borderline rude about the whole affair, Izuku was actually quirkless, meaning no superpower for him. Saddened by the fact but not willing to give up on his dream, Izuku tried to see the bright side to this situation. There was no rule outright saying a quirkless person couldn't become a hero, right? Izuku had asked his mother if he could still be a hero. He had needed her to say yes. Sadly for both Midoriya, sadness took a hold of Inko and she had hugged her son, apologizing and crying as if this was all her fault. Sensing the sadness of his currently youngest child, the King of Hell decided that it was time to make his move. Seeing as his daughter was saying goodbye to the guests at her birthday party and his darling wife was in the midst of punishing the latest batch of fornicators, Lucifer did not announce his temporary unavailability. He had snapped his fingers, creating a portal to Earth. He couldn't actually go without being summoned, at least not in full. Looking upwards to the snake on his hat, the reptile slithered into the portal with a letter in its mouth. The snake suddenly manifested into the youngest Midoriya's room, dropping the letter and spitting potion onto it. Before Inko could attempt to fling the creature away from her baby boy, the letter sizzled and became screaming smoke that took the form of the person who had both given her greatest treasure and haunted her dreams at night. Now then, let's get straight to it. Lucifer's projection said. Inko, our son, isn't quirkless, like that foolish doctor claimed. The boy indeed has an ability, but at the moment it can only work or be trained in one place. That place, of course, is hell. Hell. The mother had screamed in shock, taking her son into her arms and moving him out of Lucifer's eyesight as much as she could. Mommy? Izuku asked. Is this my daddy? Inko wanted to deny this question. She truly wanted to say no and run away. But, wrapped up in feelings of failure and desperation to save her baby boy from having his only longing destroyed, she nodded a reluctant yes. Yes son. Lucifer explained. My name, well, just call me Dad. Now, I have tried many times in the past to have a child like you Izuku and they all sadly ended in failure. But you? You son are special, having been born in the era of superpowers or quirks, I knew that this time it would work, and it has. He then turned his attention to Inko. Now, if you'll agree. I'd like to take Izuku down with me for a while so that he can meet his half-sister Charlie, she's been wanting to see her half-brother since his BRTH. Explained Lucifer. Not to worry, he will return unharmed by breakfast time. Every instinct told Inko to refuse him. She knew what he was. She knew what he could do. But, he was Izuku's father, and every child had the right to meet their parents. She looked down at Izuku, cleared his tears and kissed his forehead before turning to the devil. Fine. But promise me he will be okay and safe. She begged. Of course. Said Lucifer said with a tip of his hat as the smoke started to subside. Grab onto Kane whenever you're ready, Izuku. The boy did just that and was soon pulled into the portal. Izuku. Inko called out in desperation, regret suddenly filling her. She would not move from that spot until the portal reappeared an hour later, a sleeping Izuku with a note attached to him. In exhaustion and desperation to make sure her baby boy was safe, Inko had slept in her son's bed that night, holding her son with all the love and desperate strength in her form. Hell, Magna Castle. Princess Charlie, sensing her father closing a portal and having said goodbye to her friends, rushed into his study. However, in her excitement and curiosity, she had not been looking where she was going and felt something knock into her and tumble backwards, the princess rolling along with it until they hit a wall. Lucifer couldn't help but chuckle at the scene and was quick to record it and forward it Lilith. Oh we. Izuku groaned and he and Charlie tried to untangle. Sorry about that. I wasn't Lu. Charlie started only to drag her word as she looked at who she ran into, a little boy with similar features like hers turning towards her father. Said little boy was looking at her in confusion. He tilted his head. Charlie titled her own. They blinked at the same time and then stuck their tongues out at each other, giggling. Then they made a few funny faces before Charlie managed to sneak her fingers into the boy's armpits and began to tickle him, only for him to do the same for her cheeks. Even the king of hell couldn't help but smile at the scene. Daddy? Who is this? The princess of hell asked once the giggles stopped. For the afterlife of her, she was certain she should know who this was. My dear Charlie, this is your half-brother Izukumidoriya. Lucifer beamed. Izuku? Meet your half-sister, my oldest and dearest child, Charlie. Said Lucifer. And instantly, Charlie remembered. The baby her parents had shown her. This was him. Izu. Charlie beamed, hugging the boy and taking him into a hug. Wait, I have a sister. Said Izuku once he finally realized what was going on. Half-sister. Lucifer clarified, but he went ignored as the two of them hugged with tears on their eyes, one for having someone to call a sibling, the other for finally meeting her brother. They even nuzzled noses. At that point, Lucifer's tolerance of the cuteness died. Well, you two have fun. He announced, moving towards his office. Izuku noticed and reached for his father. But Daddy? Don't you? Sorry son. Lucifer mused, checking his pocket watch. I have 1,000 things to do, an entire reality to keep from collapsing, rebellions to squish, souls to torture, but Charlie is here, she can help you have a passable birthday. I thought you. You thought I was going to train you to use your quirk, which you don't even know. Lucifer mused. I suppose I could tell you, are you familiar with the term antichrist? Izuku was not, but to his knowledge, nothing that ended with anti was good. His father, seeing this realization dawning on him, smiled. Yes, my son. You are the latest in a long, long line of half-demons who will disrupt the societal norms that the bug guy and humans have kept for millennia. Like I told your mother, I have been trying to create an antichrist for centuries and they always failed. So, to prevent myself from most likely being disappointed again. Until you prove that you'll be better than all of them, I'll only acknowledge you for Charlie's sake or paying Inko's parental support. Charlie had this and tensed. So, you don't love mommy? Izuku asked, praying for a negative answer to that question before feeling a sharp sting. Izu. Charlie cooed worried, hugging him gently. I wouldn't recommend praying here, it harms even half-breeds like you. And, love? Lucifer asked, stifling a chuckle. No, Izuku. Your mommy and I only met the night I put you in her belly so she could give BRTH to you. The only reason I even did so was so that I could shake things up in this frightfully boring world you call home. My heart belongs only to my wife Lilith. Charlie's mother, who okayed you because your mother was cute. But, since you mentioned Inko. Izuku grabbed an oil sack that was filled with golden coins, jewels and pearl necklaces. Happy birthday, buy something nice and give the rest to your mother, she'll get another next month. In case you're wondering, I stole it from the Vatican. They are far richer than the public believes, and what better way to vex them by having them support you and your mother in spite of you being of my BLD. Izuku had stopped listening after stole. What all those people thought was true, he was the son of a villain. The villain. By all means, pursue your dream, become a hero. Lucifer said. Just don't expect to get very far, the mortals of any time never truly do accept darker being as heroes. But don't take my word for it. Give it your all, son. If things don't work out, when you get here you can rule over any section of hell, or maybe actually build a purgatory. The mortals believe in it so much we may as well have something, hell's getting so crowded. Well, I must be off. Lucifer then left, leaving the 4-year-old just standing there. Charlie had never truly been angry before now. She had often been annoyed when her parents were too busy for her. She got irritated when her daddy stole her bike to ride around when he had his own. She dreaded seeing some of the overlords and grin and bore it whenever Sumion mocked her for asking questions or trying something new. But this? This was the first time she truly felt anger for her parents. She knew her father well enough to know that, in spite of being the literal devil himself, he would not have brought her half-brother just to tell him to prove himself worthy of his notice, nor to tell the poor boy he was indeed not born of a loving union. No, her daddy was playing at something. Something that no doubt had to do with his grudge on his former boss and friends. But right now, that didn't matter. She saw so much of what she wanted to believe in this little boy. And right now, this little boy needed one person to believe in him. Without another word, she picked an uneaten slice of birthday cake and offered it to Izuku, a hopeful look on her face. Perhaps Izuku just wanted to distract himself, but he took the cake, and devoured it. Yummy. He frowned, then looking down at his feet. Charlie, knowing this wasn't enough, racked her brain to find something to cheer up her brother. She vaguely recalled a song she had heard her parents complaining about, something about inspiring hope in mortals. In her desperation, she began to sing it. With the music seemingly coming along with it as she sang, her guards Razzle and Dazzle were playing the necessary instruments. The song picked up Izuku's attention and he turned his attention to his half-sister. The way she sang the words, it was as if she was speaking them to Izuku, who slowly but surely reached towards her. Charlie took the slowly tearing up boy into her arms, gently brushing his tears and hair. She smiled at him, a warmth filling her form. A new feeling filled her, warmth she wanted to always hold, desperation to keep this boy happy, a refusal to see him sad, and blinding rage at those who didn't believe in him. She didn't delude herself, the fact he was the only sibling she knew paid a factor, but Charlie Magna honestly couldn't describe what was happening, but she knew one thing, she loved her little brother unconditionally. And to keep him happy, She would keep smiling and ignore her own hurt at what was going on. After a few verses, Izuku slowly and gently reached for his half-sister's face as she continued to sing, never breaking eye contact with him. Her smile never faded either, as tears begun to escape her own eyes, the lyrics' meaning coming to her. In spite of the pain in her own heart, Izuku began to clear Charlie's own tears, a weak smile crossing his own face. His sister, in spite of the fact that he had only known for a few minutes, should not be crying, he told himself. He recalled All Might once saying in an interview. When you have to save someone, they're usually in a scary situation. A true hero saves not only their lives, but also their hearts. That's what I believe. So no matter how scary things get, give them a smile, as if to say, I'm okay. The people in this world who can smile are always the strongest. If only the boy had known the full story behind that line. Charlie kept singing gently and smiling all throughout the song, Izuku smiling back at her and gently hugging her as the lyrics began to come to an end. Arigato, ne-chan. In spite of the foreign tongue, the warmth and desperation in Izuku's words told Charlie everything he meant. The waterworks then really started, but she simply pressed him close to her chest so that he couldn't see her tears as she began to ugly cry, still singing as she did so and doing all in her considerable might to keep the tone and tune going. But Izuku was not easily deterred. He gently pushed himself free and wiped his half-sister's tears, and then kissing her forehead and eyelids like his mother often did when he got scared. Please don't cry. He begged. You know why? To their surprise, perhaps due to the song, they then said together. Because I am here. Razzle and Dazzle freely cried in spite of themselves. The song began to wind down and the siblings' smiles stayed firm before a yawn escaped Izuku and he fell asleep. I'll always be here. Charlie whispered a promise into her brother's ears. No matter where, when, or what, I'll always look over you, Izuku. A picture then fell out of the boy's pocket, one of him and his mother. Seeing the kindly woman, Charlie opened a portal to send her brother home, but just before she did, she jotted down a note, stuffed it in his pocket and kissed his forehead. She then gently pushed him inside. As his children bonded, Lucifer watched from afar, a smile on his face. Not just at the bond between his two children, but how smoothly this was going so far. The biggest mistake he had made with the other antichrists, he had been quick to realize, was that he waited far too long for their connection to him to be revealed. This time, he'd make his child want to be an antichrist. One of the upsides of lowered Religon in this time and place, only the truly devoted or curious poked their nose into business like this. All he had done was employ class and rather elementary reverse psychology. By motivating Izuku to become the greatest half-demon, he was all but ensuring that the Antichrist would come about this time. The mortals of Izuku's time all clung on to their precious symbol of peace, so it stood to reason that when Izuku eventually eclipsed All Might and all other heroes, they would flock to him and do whatever he wished. And then it would time for him to stick it to God and for the denizens of hell to have their day in the sun. When Izuku awoke the next morning, he and his mother found the note. If you ever want to see me, call this number and they'll bring you to me. They may be imp assassins, but the founder owes me a few favors. Any time, any place. Don't hesitate. I'd love to get to know my baby brother. Stay gold, Izuku. Stay gold. Somehow, the letter filled Inko with hope and assurance that there was someone out there who cared for her son, and she smiled, nodding at Izuku's unasked question. The little boy had then quickly drawn a picture that he would keep in his room, hidden away from Albert himself and his mother, the image of a teenage girl with apple-like cheeks, blonde hair and golden eyes filled with kindness and care. Charlie Ne-san was the title. And thus, an unbreakable bond began. Izuku would visit Charlie at night or whenever he needed comfort, his sister applauding his kind nature and never giving up on his dream. She would also take down the names of anyone who was cruel to him or mocked his dream, waiting for them to either come to hell so that she could educate them herself, or compiling a list of IMP to deal with at her signal and then she could educate them. One must remember she was still a demon after all, violence to protect what she treasured came to her. On that note, while they had not met formally, Inko and Charlie had formed an unspoken agreement, protect and comfort Izuku in their own ways. While Inko did not know the full details of that list for IMP, she adored Charlie for being the one to give Izuku determination in his dream. The feelings were returned to the point that meeting Inko just once was placed high on Charlie's bucket list. And when Charlie shared her own dream, Izuku returned the determination and support she had given him. Because as Izuku saw and learned more about hell and the sinners who called it home, he was able to realize what many did not: villains were rarely born, they were made, often with little chance to redeem themselves, especially in his time, where the titles of hero and villain were thrown around almost willy-nilly. The green-haired boy in particular recalled Destro from the beginning of the Age of Quirks, how he and his followers were more misguided than anything and had fought for an ultimately good cause, but were unable to see others' viewpoints, which was, as Charlie described, the first step towards redemption. In spite of his matured look on such matter, Charlie refused to let Izuku seek out or speak to sinners for the longest time, often confiding him to either the palace or the penthouse of the building that would become the Happy Hotel. But one day, a certain female moth demon had caught Charlie's eye and, partially in happiness to her dumping the abomination boy who he had never liked, Izuku struck up a conversation with the one who his sister would come to love. Not long after that, he had run into angeldust, but that's a tale for another day. Long story short, the two children of Lucifer had each other to thank for the best in their lives, even if they seemed to be on different levels of best, and they adored each other for it. If she had lived on Earth, Charlie would have become Izuku's true greatest hero. And if he had lived in Hell, Charlie would use Izuku as proof her redemption idea needed to be at least tried. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Mrotrax on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.